The limud this week should be Fu'at, Morenu V'Rabbeinu, Harav Menachem Yoshua Ben Lea Rezo, V'Achola Shlomit Bat Chaya Betoch Kol Shar Cholei Yisrael. When we enter into Parashat Pekudei, it's a very unique opportunity to see a unit in the Torah start and close. We know that the unit of the Mishkan starts in Parashat Truma and ends this week in Parashat Pekudei. And as we look in an overview of the parashot, we see a lot of kelim, we see a lot of gadim, and we see Chet Egel in the middle like we spoke about. But sometimes, through one pasuk, we could have an entire different outlook on the entire idea and concept of these parashot of the Mishkan. Now there's one pasuk at the end of Parashat Pekudei that we might read and go by really fast. But if we enter into this pasuk and maybe say it in a different tune, we'll understand that this pasuk has so much more than just 6 or 7 words. ולא יכל משה לבוא אל אוהל מועד כי שכן עליו הענן. The tune for these words should be the tune of Eicha. If we look back to what Am Yisrael have done, they gave all their money, they gave all their time, they gave all their knowledge to this building, the Mishkan. And obviously, if we look back in Parashat Truma, we know that the reason, the idea for the building of the Mishkan was V'shachanti itam, that Hashem will have His Shechina within Am Yisrael. And these words are the saddest, most difficult pasuk to see in the entire Torah. V'lo yachol Moshe lavo el ohel moed ki shachan alav he'anan. We did everything. We built all the kelim. We made all the bgadim. And now we're waiting for the final note, for the climax, for Hashem to come down and say we're together. V'lo yachol Moshe. Moshe cannot enter. The goal didn't happen. We did everything possible in human ability. And the final purpose never happened. Sefer Shmot closes in the most difficult pasuk that Moshe cannot enter. And there is no connection between Hashem and Moshe, and therefore there is no connection right now between Hashem and Am Yisrael. Now, to understand the depth of this idea, I want to go very far away into 2 different areas to try and understand what is the meaning of this one pasuk. The one idea is the concept of Kedusha and Tehara. And we're going to try and understand that concept through the Sefat Emet in Parashat Shlach in Bamidbar. And the other way we're going to try and understand this pasuk are through 2 different words that we say in Tefillah every day in Tefillat Shacharit. So the first idea is within Judaism, we have two very strong concepts of uplifting a person. One concept is called tehara. The other concept is called kedusha. If we try and think about what is the difference between these two concepts, we have to look a little bit into each one. If you ask anyone what's the difference or what's the opposite of tehara, they'll tell you tum'ah. If you ask someone how do you uplift yourself from tum'ah to tehara, there are so many ways in the Torah that explain to us. You do 7 days of tehara, you go to the mikvah, you bring a korban. There's a specific action that man could do to take him from tum'ah to tehara. But if you ask about what is the difference of kodesh, or what is the opposite of kodesh, then someone will tell you chol. But all chol means is it's not its own definition. Tumah has its own definition. Tehara has its own definition. When you're tameh, you can't go here, you could go here. When you're tahor, you're capable of doing this, you're capable of doing that. But with kedusha and chol, there's no real difference. How does someone get to kedusha? So true, we have all of Mesilat Yesharim that speaks about how someone could uplift himself to kedusha. But there's no list. No one tells you, do this, do that, come here, do that. So what does this mean about tehara and kedusha? So says the Sefat Emet that every one of us, if we look sometimes in the Parashat of Tzitzit, we'll see that there are two different colors. One is white and one is blue. And the obvious question is, why not green and orange? Why not purple and yellow? What is so unique about blue and white? Says the Sefat Emet in Parashat Shlach in Sefer Bamidbar in the year 1888. Be'inyan Lavan v'Tchelet. What is Lavan and Tchelet all about? Bechinat tehara v'kedusha. He says the white resembles tehara. White is a color that is the root of all colors. And it's been colored with other colors that make it not what it's supposed to be. So the white resembles tumah and tehara. The world of people who understand the need that after I make a mistake, I fix my mistake. After I unenable a certain ability of myself, I create a new ability through tahara. He says, V'kedusha hi atchelet, v'hu me'ein hatzitz, shel kohen gadol, dechtiv alav kodesh la Hashe'm. So incredible what the Sefat Emet says. Says the Sefat Emet, the blue color is similar to the tzitz. And what does it say on the tzitz, on the forehead of the Kohen Gadol? Kodesh la Hashe'm. The tzitz and the tchelet say that there's a certain ability in the world that is not up to man. Kedusha is LaHashem. The final decision is LaHashem. You could work in the process and you could perfect yourself to the level of Tahara, but you never ever decide on Kedusha. Kedusha belongs to God. Kedusha does not belong to man. And says the Sefat Emet incredibly, why in the tzitzit do we have blue and white? Because they resemble two different ways of the way the reality of the world works. God permits man to reach a certain level, but man can never reach the end. Man never decides on the specific goal. And I think to try and understand what the Sefat Emet is saying here is a concept that I think that every one of us experience not only once in a lifetime, but in every single day of our lives. How many of us have an incredible goal we want to reach? For one, his goal might be to find the right kala. He wants to find a way to build a beautiful bite. For another, he might have an amazing goal to try and be an amazing educator in Am Yisrael. And for someone else, the goal might be to be the greatest professional doctor in the world. But what's amazing about life is that never is the final decision up to man. We can try really hard and we could work really hard, but we never really know 100% what the outcome will be. We do everything we can. We put all our talents and we could reach a certain level, but we'll never ever reach the ability to decide how things will be. And so many terrible leaders in the world, they said, we can decide. We are the ones that could say what the outcome will be. And we'll kill this amount of people to make our goal come true. And God looks up from up above and says, the final decision is always mine. And I want to try and understand this in one more place in Tefillah. The first bracha we say before Kriyat Shema, we say, Baruch Ata Hashem, Elokeinu Melech HaOlam, Yotzer Or, Uvoreh Choshech. We call God a name, and we call him a Yotzer. We call Hashem the Creator. But if we look at the end of Tefillah, in Aleinu L'Shabeach, we call ourselves a different name. And in Aleinu L'Shabeach we say, L'taken olam b'malchut shakai. God's name is the Creator. Man's name is Mitaken, a fixer. Man is never the creator. None of us decide the color of our eyes or the height of our bodies or the parents that we're born to. We're born with with a certain element that God says to us, I chose, I created. You're not the creator. You're not the builder. You're only the fixer. Your ability is only to take what I've given you and perfect it. Bring out deeper meanings behind what I've decided. But don't think for 1 second that you can decide the way things should look. If we go back to our question, we said the last pasuk of Bniyat HaMishkan is V'lo yechol Moshe lavo el ohel moed. Am Yisrael did so much, but God says to them, one of the deepest lessons in the world, don't ever try and don't ever think that you decide on the goal. Your job is to work within what you have received and try and perfect it. And I think that this is the biggest message of the Mishkan. Because so often in life, we want to be the ones who will change everything. And sometimes we look at ourselves, at our lives, at our families, and we're like, why isn't it like that? Why don't we have this? Why weren't we born this way, that way? The Mishkan says, your ability is to receive the Kedusha from Hashem. The Kedusha is a present from God. But that means that you're able to mitaher the world. You cannot bring the Kedusha down. We don't have the way to hold on to Hashem and say, I'm God, you're not God. That's why Hashem takes the Kedusha to himself. And he says to Moshe, the Mishkan is locked because the Mishkan is mine. But those locking of the doors of the Mishkan are what teach us that in our personal lives, we shouldn't try and throw away what we have received. But to see that if I have received certain talents from God, if I have been zocheh to marry a certain person in the world, if I am zocheh to sit in a certain place in the world, see that that is where you could try and perfect and bring out abilities that no one has brought out before. Only as long as you remember that on the tzitz it says, Kodesh belongs la Hashem. Let Hashem be the Yotzer, and let us be the Mitaknim. Bezrat Hashem, we should all be zocheh to love the presence and potentials that God has given us, and then realize that our ability is to create tehara and to daven for Kedusha. Shabbat Shalom.